Welcome to Chat Off the Mat, the podcast that explores the transformative journey of healing and self-discovery, where energy, spirituality, mind, and body intersect. Hi, I'm your host, Rose Whippich, and I invite you to join me and explore ways to invite more holistic practices into your life. I will feature experts and practitioners who provide insights, tips, and practical advice. From Reiki to qigong, chakra balancing to shamanism, this podcast will be your guide to understanding how these practices can lead to more harmony and greater energy. Whether you're seeking stress relief, emotional balance, or a deeper connection to your authentic self, Chat Off the Mat will provide you with insights and inspiration. Let's start discovering the possibilities that lie within you. Today's guest is Fay Johnstone. Welcome, Fay. I'm really excited that you're here today on Chat Off the Mat.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, all the way from not so sunny Scotland, but Scotland nonetheless.
Yes, I love Scotland. So I've invited Fay. Fay's a teacher of mine, and I've invited Fay to come onto the podcast so she can talk about her practices as a Reiki and plant practitioner, drummer, shaman, and healer. And so we'll start in with the questions. One of my questions is I've read your books, and you used to live in the city. So you used to have a past life before becoming a healer and teacher. And you worked at a corporate job, but found an inner calling to follow a different path, particularly to work with plants and integrating them into your Reiki healing practice. I would love to hear more about your personal journey, which may inspire our listeners to perhaps follow their own inner calling on a different path in life.
Oh, well, okay. So I think first things first, your listeners need to know that actually I was quite a slow burner. My spiritual path, I ended up learning Reiki because a friend said, "Hey, there's this thing called Reiki. It connects you to healing, and it enables you to heal yourself. Do you want to give it a go?" And I just went, "Yeah, that sounds amazing." And that was literally me starting on my Reiki journey. And I'd always been interested, in past life stuff, meditation, things like that. But I feel that that's the way the universe presented this path to me, is by saying, well, she's going to take a long time to get there by herself, so we'll just give her a nudge from one of her friends. And I started doing Reiki, but this is what I mean by a slow burner for everyone listening, is that for a long time I was walking in my sort of job that I thought I ought to do, doing all the things I thought I should do. And then on the side, I've got my Reiki hands and I'm doing meditation and I'm reading. I devour books and information. So I'm kind of trying to read all this esoteric stuff. And this is, it's 24 years this year that I was first attuned to Reiki. So I'm talking about an era when we didn't have all this information out there. You had to explain 100 times to someone what Reiki was, because they just didn't. Well, certainly in the circles that I was moving in, my friends would just humor me and go, "Oh, okay, you can practice on me," because they were being kind, not because they really understood what I was practicing. So that was kind of how I started. And what you were referring to there is I had this sort of, if you like, this crisis moment where I realized I got to the stage where on paper I had all the things. I had a great job, I had, income coming in, I was living in Paris at the time. I mean, that sounds glamorous to me now. It was all of that, and it all looked great, and it all looked like this person doing the things that doing the things on paper that we expect. Someone I had a nice education, I went to university, and it was all like me ticking off these milestones. And then I had this kind of crisis point where I realized I was deeply unhappy. And I got to that point, and I'm going to share, this is one of the practices which I still swear by today. And some of the listeners might be familiar with the author Julia Cameron. She wrote a book that she's very famous for, The Artist's Way. So I'm talking about me in my mid-20s, finding the artist's way, and I just started. I was practicing self Reiki anyway, because I was Reiki level 2 at the time. And then so I'm sort of doing all this behind scenes, and I'm showing up to business meetings, but then behind the scenes I'm, doing my morning pages. And it was through one of this process called the artist date, where Julia, one of the suggestions is that you take yourself off on a date, and you spend time with yourself, you spend time with your creative self. And it was one of these artist dates where I took myself to, it was just like this door pulled me in, all these beautiful flowers and plants, and I bought as many as I could, and I took them back to the apartment where I was staying. And I couldn't have told you what they were. I knew nothing about plants, but I didn't really, they were speaking to my heart. They weren't speaking to the head that has to say, oh yes, that's a gladioli, that's a marigold. It was this heart connection. And it was from that moment, and I really thought, you know what, I need to stop this. This is not helping me. And so I then gradually I moved back. I moved out of the city. I moved back to the UK. I started growing vegetables. I started studying herbal medicine, and I started actually working for a company that was all to do with conservation. So I was suddenly like, and this is what I say to people is, we give the universe an inch, and certainly this is the case for the plants. You give the plants an inch, and wow, they come in, they take a mile. All they need is that little crack in the door, this little willingness. Or in terms of the universe, the universe needs a willingness to change, a willingness to see something differently, or to say, you know what, this isn't working, there must be another way. And then things start to open up, and energy starts to shift and expand. And that's what happened to me when I got myself, when I had that awakening of, and it wasn't an awakening, it was just a realization of, you know what, I'm actually miserable. These cocktails and high heels are not making me happy. I need to get back to what's true, what's me. And so, and then that was really that was where it all started. And this is why I say I'm a slow burner. This didn't happen overnight. It was just a real process of me coming, if you like, grounding myself, coming back to myself, perhaps discovering parts of myself that I hadn't been looking at, because I thought I was doing the whole, well, I should do this, and this sounds like a good idea. Oh yes, I can do that. I need to do that, without thinking, well, what do I want to do? And then when I started to kind of follow the nudges of what I wanted to do, that was when we ended up, and I say we, I'm talking about myself and my husband. He's now my husband. We went to Nova Scotia. We ran a flower farm for 5 years, and all of this was really, I had, and because and when I say to people, I'm attuned to Reiki, and so Reiki is with me in all of this. There isn't a day that I wake up and I don't have Reiki, and I'm not Reiki, and I'm not connecting to Reiki. So the underlying practice is Reiki. That was coming through this energy awareness and so on. But I still want to say that actually Julia Cameron's morning pages, I still do those now. This day, I still do my morning pages. I have had years or moments where I have not done them, but I do my morning pages every morning, and I write free flow 3 pages of whatever's in my head, just to clear the channel. And then once that's on the page, often it's anxieties, it's to-do lists, it's the things that you're frustrated with, concerned about. I write those down, get those 3 pages done, and then something else can come in, because that has been seen. So I still do that practice today.
That's a great practice. I've actually done it myself for many, many years on and off, and I'm planning on doing it again. But what I'm hearing as you're telling me that story is that you were aware, you had an awareness of that plant or those plants or that store calling to you. So you're in tune already to your inner guidance. And I think one of the things I often speak about on this show is encouraging people to do that. So you did that, but that doesn't come overnight. A lot of people don't trust that instinct, and you did. And once you did that, it opened that door, and it was life changing for you. So I'm
Yes,
hoping, yeah, go ahead.
it's leaning into the trust, isn't it? That's where we, trusting oneself. And actually, when this comes down to the plants, and I know we're going to talk about talking to plants soon, but the when we start talking to plants, for example, or even shamanic journeying, working with the drum, or even, practicing Reiki, and feeling sensations and so on, what happens mostly for us is because we're taught not to trust ourselves, we're taught to trust, the teacher or the other person with authority, or we're taught to trust the pharmaceutical drugs and not the body or whatever it is. We tend to think that we're wrong, and I used to have a phrase that was so ingrained in me. My automatic response was, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And actually, I have to thank my husband for saying to me, and if I ever say I don't know now, he looks at me and he says, yes, you do. And I stop myself, because we do know, but we're so used to sort of being in that place of, no, I don't know, I couldn't possibly know that. And so actually, yeah, it's that trusting, isn't it? Coming back to trust and trusting our first feeling. I think that's what I say with the plants, is trusting your first response. And it's like that with Reiki, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what I find also, the thing which has tripped me up so many times, and it still trips me up today, is when, and this happens as a teacher, you probably experienced this as well, Rose, is that we have students and we ourselves it's when we start to compare ourselves to other people. And there's always, and I always say this, there's always someone in the class who's receiving amazing sensations or messages or healing, or it's mind blowing. And that throws us off, because we start to compare what we're experiencing, and we think, oh, well, mine isn't so dramatic or vivid or colorful, and I'm not a visual person, and all of this story that we tell ourselves. And it's important for us to sort of start to reconnect with self and think, okay, well, that's that person's experience. Let me talk to myself. Let me understand me and how I talk to myself, and how my body talks to me, and how I connect to things, because we're all very different. And that's what I see time and time again, students, tripping themselves up. And I hear students say to me, oh, I'm not a visual person, I can't do shamanic Reiki drumming, for example. I can't do the journey experience because I'm not visual. And my response is, well, a visual is one sense. We're multi-sensory people, so it's not a movie that you're trying to watch. It's something that it's a whole body experience. So that's an example of like, we have to reframe things. We have to tell ourselves, yes, I've got this. How do I talk to myself?
Yeah, I think it's getting out of your head and really coming into your heart and feeling things in the body in a lot of senses. I also encourage my Reiki students to trust their own inner guidance. They often say to me, well, I don't get visions when I'm doing Reiki on a person or impressions. I'm like, well, don't have any expectations. Don't feel just let it go and be open to receiving. So yeah, that's a very important message. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit about the plants. In you work with plants, and I've written a book about plant spirit Reiki. And you mention in your introduction, I want to read this to the audience, that it's a threefold journey. That it is not like herbal medicine or aromatherapy, but the focus is on connecting with the plants and nature as conscious beings and working in partnership with them in whatever way that might be for our own healing. And I thought that was a very powerful statement. And as soon as I read that, I could feel your intention behind what you do, that connection you have to the plants and wanting to share that with everyone. And it made me more aware of the power of plants. I mean, I look at my backyard and I see right now just the trees, but they're powerful and they speak to me. So, and you integrate all of this into your Reiki practice. Can you just share some of the practical ways anyone, whether someone's a Reiki practitioner or not, they can incorporate into their own day to connect with the healing power of plants?
Sure, and I love this question. It's like my favorite thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the one of the things is we've got ourselves very disconnected. We think that we're here, we're human, and they're out there, those plant things. And actually, we're all part of the same magical, mysterious, earth wide web. We are all connected. We're in relationship with these plants. The plants are giving us their oxygen through their, processes. We breathe out carbon dioxide. The plants work with the carbon dioxide for all their complex processes, and then they produce oxygen. They're giving us oxygen. So we're already in a relationship with them. And then as beings on this planet, the plants were here first, guys. We came along afterwards. So we've got so for a start, we've got the dynamic all wrong. And actually, so what we need to kind of almost like really get back to basics and ground. I feel sometimes we forget a cup of tea, a plant. It's a plant that and even now with oat milks and almond milks and coconut milk, we're consuming plants. Plants give us nourishment. I think I'm wearing a cotton top. That's a plant. So it's almost like remembering this relationship and honoring it some way. And sometimes that can just be a simple, it's just like almost like turning it in your brain and thinking, wow, this cup of tea I'm drinking, it was originally a plant, or the coffee, that was originally a plant that was growing perhaps in Colombia and has gone through this process and arrived here. And it's just this reverence of, wow, thank you. And one of the really, in a sense, the language of nature is through the heart. And we get to that space through gratitude. And so, and this is obviously very easy to do if you walk out of your front door and you're in this beautiful countryside. I mean, it's very easy to go, oh, wonderful. Oh, goodness me, isn't this tree beautiful? So for folks who live in a city, you're going to say, well, that is much more challenging. And I agree, it is much more challenging, but you can still find the gorgeous trees that grow on sidewalks, lovely, there'll be lovely areas of parkland that are maintained, and just finding a moment to feel appreciation for the beauty that these plants are creating and for this connection. And even through the breath, just simply breathing, we are breathing the plants. And the meditation I do is I breathe you. I say that as I breathe in, and as I breathe out, I'm saying you breathe me. And that's a really simple mantra to kind of do with a favorite tree. And really, I mean, the way to connect with nature is to get your coat on, get outside. That's what you've got to do. And even in the winter, we're coming out of the Scottish winter here. It's a case of get your coat on, wrap yourself up, find a tree, connect, and when I say connect, it can be as simple just looking at a tree and smiling in that, and really feeling it in your heart, just feeling, wow, that's a magical being right there. It's beautiful, or whatever it is you're feeling. One of my students, he kind of flirts with the flowers when they're in there and out in the summer, and he's like saying, wow, you're so beautiful. Hello, may I smell you, and just really this interaction of, so imagining that having fun, pretending that the plants are your brothers and your sisters, they're your relations, they're your friends, and finding the beauty, even if it's on your way to work and you're taking the subway or the bus and there's just nothing, and you're just feeling like, well, there's just nothing here. There is always something, and there is always the earth. There is always the earth that you connect with through your feet, and there is always the breath, which is connecting you with this relationship that you have with plants. But I think the thing to remember, and if we all had loads of money, I'd say, yeah, buy yourself fresh flowers every day. Yeah. Wouldn't that be great? I don't buy fresh flowers every day. That would be very unsustainable in so many ways. But I often talk about bringing the outside in. So if there is any way that you can bring something from the natural world into your environment, and obviously if you live, I live by the seashore here, and I've got woods here, I can bring in seashells, bits of bark, fancy leaves, a twig. That's easy for me. It's harder for you if you live in a city, but just to have images that touchstones that make your heart sing. Like, even if it was an amazing place that you last went to on your holidays, on your vacation, even if it's an amazing beach with a gorgeous sunset, or a gorgeous wood that you went for a gorgeous like hike in, these types of images that fill us up. And having images like that around the work environment, the home
Right.
environment, screensavers, and so on.
Right.
And I'm just going to give you one more thing, because I know I'm rambling,
No,
but
go
just
ahead.
also to remember, fragrance is really, really key, I find. And things like, I even like today, I probably put some face cream on, and I had some hand wash. My hand wash was something like mandarin. That's the plant,
Nice.
that's fragrant. And
Mhm.
skincare is often fragrance. I mean, I'm a real sort of old-fashioned person. I love rose, I love lavender, all those kind of. I'm a floral person. Find out what aromas you enjoy, because that is the way of connecting with the plant as well. So there are many different levels that we can go through with the plants. And then obviously, if we're consuming herbal medicines and herbal teas, we're into another relationship with them. Or if we're, putting herbal salts on our food, if we're consuming a plant-based diet, and so on. There's just all these different ways that actually the plants are nourishing us. But we can be nourished just really from a very visual, sensory experience. I just love experiencing plants through the senses. So the smells, and obviously the way they're impacting the visual of kind of our landscape is really a key way to connect.
As you're speaking about this, I feel this like this feeling in my heart space that I have such a more of an appreciation as you're talking about this, and how I really want to create more of a relationship with plants. It's just um it's a lovely feeling that I'm feeling, and I love how you talk about that relationship. We forget that it is a relationship, that they're living beings, and that we should not take them for granted in any way, and that they're here for us and we're here for them, and it's just lovely. And I love even if you don't live in a country where you can have the flowers, invite them into your home. Screensavers, right? We're looking at our screens all day, or I love that. Those are amazing ways to connect with nature. That was very lovely. I'm also, well, even though my name is Rose, I'm more of a citrus person. And my dad was from Sicily, and there was lemon trees, and he brought that here. In the winter, he would have lemon trees in his garage, and the perfume from the lemon flowers are amazing. I wish I can share that with everyone right now. And I would just sit there and smell those beautiful little flowers, and then they would produce the most beautiful lemons. It was just, he would bring into his environment a piece of his homeland that he's not there. He wasn't there, so he brought it here. So yes, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
that is so magic. You know
yeah.
what? I'm going to share another story. It's actually a thing for people to think about. So this is what you've just shared there, Rose, is you've shared a story of a plant which is really interwoven into your family and into that part of you. So I would refer to that plant as the lemon tree, as a plant spirit ally for you.
Mhm.
That plant, if you were to smell that plant, for example, you might even think of your father. You would think, or you might even remember a time. It would be very connected through its aroma to memories and so on. And so my challenge for everybody listening is for you all to think about the plants in your life. And so for me, I could go, well, yeah, there was a big horse chestnut tree that me and my neighbor used to climb when we were 7 years old. That's a significant plant for me in my life. For others, it might be, oh, I always remember, the fragrance of my grandmother with her lavender or with her sweet peas. So this is a
Right.
challenge for everyone. Just think about the ways that you're already in relationship with plants, and you might not have thought about it up until today. Even if it's like, oh, well, my mom used to always make lamb on a Sunday, and we'd have, mint sauce with rosemary,
Right.
that kind of relationship. They're making they're weaving their way into your story. And that is a way in a sense that we can start. Sometimes that's a starting point for us into sort of opening to this relationship that we're in already with the plants.
Yes, invoking those beautiful memories. And fortunately my sister's maintaining those lemon trees, and she did gift me one last week, a lemon from one of those lemon trees, and I eat the whole lemon. Well, not the outside, but it brings beautiful memories. That's a wonderful exercise for everyone to do, and I do hope everyone does that. I did want to mention the trees are very powerful, or very. I have a relationship with trees. I walk by trees and they call to me, and so I go and talk to them because I could hear them. They're like, "Come over here and talk to me," or "Hey," and then we have a conversation. And I've could put my hand on a tree and just tune in, and I receive messages. And so trees speak to me, and they always have, but more so lately because I feel I am more in tune to nature. And I think they came about around COVID when we all wanted to get out of our house and just take walks because we were all stuck inside. I was able to connect more deeply with trees. So I wanted to share that story with people as well. Um, and I think you actually have a similar story in one of your books that you connected with an elven tree, and that reminded me of how my connection with trees are. So what I want to talk about too is your shamanic Reiki drumming. I first discovered you because I was called, we talk about being called to do something, to work with a drum. And so I searched the internet and came across you, and I signed up for your course, bought your book, and that's how we connected, through your course, which I absolutely loved, and I have it and I could always revisit it, and it guides us. Your book, Shamanic Reiki Drumming, it's about integrating drumming and Reiki. Um, and so I was very curious about that, and so I wanted to ask you if you can share a few ways that, or maybe even just first talk about how you connected with the drum first. We haven't talked about the drum yet. We talked about plants. So when did you first discover the drum?
So, well, it was interesting. I started working with, gosh, I don't know necessarily how it came about, but I was very interested in shamanism. I was, and I did a basic course, a 6-week course in shamanic practice. And that was when this was my, if you like, my first discovery of the drum. This was literally somebody drumming for me, and I was learning how to do a shamanic journey and connect with spirit guides and so on. And that was an experience. Again, this is about 15 years ago that I started that experience. And then I discovered there was a lady who was teaching something called Reiki drum. And I just had that call of, well, I've got to do that. And I had that feeling that I felt almost like that, oh my God, in my head, I thought everyone's, or in my mind, or what, in my feeling was, oh, everyone's doing this. And actually, I was one of the first people that she taught. It was just really strange, but I just knew that I needed to go and connect with the drum. And so that my first experience was actually a training weekend. So I'd had experiences of somebody drumming for me and listening, and then listening to a cassette tape in those days of drumming to practice this experience of being in this expanded state of consciousness with the repetitive beat of the drum. And then, to my sheer delight, on this weekend, I learned how to work with the drum in my Reiki practice, and I was given my first drum. And that was in 2009. But what happened for me in that weekend is it just almost like, it was like dipping my toe in the water. I was like, whoa, this is just not enough information. I need to know so much more. It was like, it was the tip of the iceberg. It was, and it opened really an absolute can of worms for me, which I have been answering and discovering ever since. And this is the path that I'm on, led, really, the transformation and the power of the drum has, for me, just opened up a word. I think I say in my book, it really opened up this world of, suddenly it wasn't, oh, well, it wasn't what is, it was actually, well, what if? And it suddenly really expanded my my sense of being, my sense of connection, my consciousness into this world of possibilities, because that's what the drum does, and it shifts the pattern of the brain. And so I started down a path of shamanic practice and just learning from different teachers. And I was really fortunate. I had 2 teachers in the UK. Then when we moved to Canada, I had 2 teachers in Canada. And then when I moved to Scotland, I had a wonderful teacher who I trained with for 3 years in Scotland. So I have been, if you like, growing ever since I connected with that drum. And I've still got my original drum today. I've got many other drums. Some you can't see them, but some of them are up here on the wall. And I've still got the original drum. And I drum, I have different drums for different aspects. And the drum is the guide, really. So that's the journey. It was, in a sense, Reiki that took me, that showed me that way. And like I said, I call my practice Shamanic Reiki Drumming because I feel like you can't take the Reiki out of me. So when I'm working as a shamanic practitioner, when I'm using the drum as one of my tools, then I'm working with shamanic Reiki, because the Reiki is going to come through. And so the drum isn't necessarily the only tool I use. I also use a raffle, or I'll use bells, or I use my voice, use Reiki, and also the plants and different sort of aspects of the plants as well. We sort of talked about it previously when you read the intro of my Plant Spirit Reiki book, how when I work with plants, we're not working with them like they're a medicine, or rather a traditional medicine, like a herbal medicine that you would ingest. We're using the spirit of the plant, and in that way, it works very well with the drum, the Reiki, and the plants kind of working together, finding a pathway, shall we say. And so, yeah, for me, the drum is very expansive. It's very transformative. It's very powerful. We know that just from the way it can shift energy. If I was to beat the drum really loudly, boom, we've all experienced the power of sound. And so that, for me, the drum, it continues to be a real teacher.
Yeah, I hope that people out there are curious about using the drum. I haven't found anyone in the States. I think that maybe in the UK and Scotland and other parts of the country, using the drum, especially integrating it with Reiki or other rituals, is more popular. So we really don't have that and here. But I've been using the drum as a way to clear the energy. So before I did the podcast, before we got on the podcast, I took my drum and was banging it around the room using Reiki to just clear the energy. And I'm slowly starting to incorporate that in my Reiki practice. So I encourage those people out there that are Reiki practitioners to pick up Facebook and learn the practices, because they're not difficult, but they're very powerful. And also to use the drum for yourself. What are ways that, let's say, a person who may not be a Reiki practitioner wants to get a drum and start using it? And I do want to encourage people to and I will put the show notes, by the way, Faye, for your course and your books, for people who would like to take a look at those. But for someone who is not a practitioner and wants to use the drum, maybe some simple ways they can incorporate it into a ritual of theirs to connect with spirit or to journey.
Yeah, so just to clarify, when I'm talking about drumming, I'm not talking about kind of African djembe drumming. I'm talking about a handheld drum that you can use you can either beat it with your hand or a mallet, a beater. So it's a frame drum
I'll just show you mine
there
in
you go.
case.
That's just like that. And that's
People.
great, because that's a synthetic, that's a vegan drum. And obviously, if you're going to have a drum which is made with animal skin, you'll have the connection to that animal as well with that. So that's why different drums have many different qualities. And I suppose also what I should say is when I work with the drum in a shamanic way, I'm not working with it necessarily to make music, to play beautiful melodies. I'm working with it very specifically to kind of enter a different state of consciousness through repetition of beats, to basically shift the brain waves in my brain, or in a client's brain, for example, and to really get into this expanded state of consciousness, to basically if it shifts us out of
It
who we
does.
think we
It's out of
are.
body almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what can you do personally? So, well, interestingly, when I first started using the drum with clients, I was teaching meditation at the time, and I was going through all the mindfulness things, and I just suddenly thought, oh my God, this is going to take forever, because I could see everybody really struggling. And that's when I just picked up my drum and I said, right, everyone, this is what we're going to do. And I played the drum, and then it wasn't instant, obviously, but it was very much like, a moment where everybody went, this, you could see the brainwave, the shift in the room, the mind suddenly quietening down, and it connecting with the drum, and just you could see the rhythm shifting for everybody. So one way is we can work with the drum in meditation, because it really will help us get out of this thinking mind, the chatter, the mind that we have to, as a human, operate. We can't do Zoom calls and emails if we're kind of in this expanded state of being. But so we have to, as humans, we have to balance, we have to be in this world. But actually, when we want to get into a more harmonious state and experience the wholeness of who we are, that is when a practice like drumming or meditating with the drum can be really useful. And that's something that we can practice by ourselves. But you mentioned there shamanic journeying, and that's a way that we work with the drum to access, well, we kind of we use the drum, if you like, to ride the beat of the drum to access information from other worlds, from the shamanic world. So we want to sort of, in a sense, we shift out of this reality, and the drum helps us go into an expanded state of reality where we can access these different aspects of ourselves, different aspects of what we call in shamanism the different worlds. So there's upper, middle, and lower in traditional shamanic practice. And in this state, we can access and meet spirit guides. We can connect to inner wisdom or our higher self for deep healing and information. So if we think of the tradition, so I'm talking about a practice that if we want to, a shamanic practice, which we can use it to help others, we can use it to help ourselves. And if you think of traditionally the shamanic or the shaman, if you like, the village shaman, the village medicine woman, the medicine man, they are from indigenous tribes who, they have these practices through lineages and so on, and they would get into trance states like this through the drum, through psychoactive plants, through all sorts of different ways. The drum is just simply, in a sense, it's one way that you can access that state of expanded state of consciousness, to bring back the information, to help yourself, to help others, to help your community. And really, that's, in a sense, the intention. It's not all service to self. It's how can I bring back information, healing, wisdom that's going to benefit me, that's going to benefit others in my community. And that's where, in a sense, the intention that we can journey with. So journeying is a simple process that you can learn with the drum. You can journey for yourself. It's nice to journey for other people, though, or you can simply, as I learned all those years ago, I learned through listening to a tape, listening to an audio that was a drum. And there are these, if you're learning a sort of traditional journey, there are different sort of stages of the journey. So it kind of has a beginning, a middle, and end, a proper intention, so that the space is set up correctly and you're prepared and protected and so on. So that the journey process can be just absolute. It can be game changing for people. I've seen, people's faces at the end of journeys, and their eyes look like the lights have been turned on, because they've been able to access a piece of the puzzle, shall we say, that in their ordinary life they just weren't able to access it. But the drum helps us shift into, this other state. Or you can go to, Peru and do an ayahuasca ceremony if that's what you need to do. But the easy thing to do at home safely is to work with a drum.
Yeah. And you don't have to have the physical. You can do find I don't want to say tape because I have, I have cassette tape in my mind now. A
MP3.
playlist, MP3 is use one of the streaming services for music to find a tape. I find that it grounds me when I use my drum. If I just beat in a gentle way, and I've used it for my classes, it grounds people. You connect with like the rhythm of the earth, which is kind of nice. But I want to mention something we were speaking not long ago, and I had asked you a question and for an answer, and you said, go and use your drum and go within and see what answers you come up with. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So, I did that. I'm not going to ask say what the question was because it doesn't matter. But the fact is, I don't remember if I drummed myself and then paused and went into this state or listened to one of your drumming audio files from the course, but I was able to go within and connect with a guide that actually showed me what I needed to do or the answers to my question. And it was so powerful. We always have the answers within. Kind of reminds me of The Wizard of Oz and, oh, I can't remember the girl's name with the red shoes right now.
Dorothy.
Yes. And how Glinda, the good witch, said to her, you always have the answer. You always have the answer inside of you. So we all do. But drumming is such a powerful way to connect with that, your inner wisdom or your inner guide, and it's grounding, and the vibration of the sound is just um healing.
Hmm.
It heals, it moves energy in the body. And when I tell people when I'm doing Reiki on someone and I use the drum because it's something different, I tell them that it helps to move the stagnant energy in the body as well. So then they're more comfortable with that. And then the next thing you know, they're just sleeping on the table and Reiki is flowing. So that's a wonderful thing too.
Actually, that's a lovely practice too. I know it's in my book, but I was talking about personal practices we can
Yeah.
do with the drum.
Yes.
To do a body scan with yourself with the drum. So to drum the drum, so you sort of drum over your body, and or just drum. Actually, let me get it right. Start drumming, and then just notice in your body where you feel the beat, where uh, how different areas of the body are feeling in response to the beat, because
Mm.
that can show us where we need healing or where we need attention. And then what we can do is we can either, if we're Reiki practitioners, we can practice Reiki, or we could sit in meditation and breathe, send our breath to this area of the
Mhm.
body. So yeah, the drum can be used, and this is like a diagnostic tool almost to kind of help us find out where because we're an orchestra. We are this beautiful pattern of energy moving. I'm not my physical body, I'm not my mind, I'm this beautiful rhythm of energy. And what happens in life is, things happen to us, things occur, and my beautiful rhythm starts to actually, it might get a bit off, it might get a
Mm.
bit misaligned or out of tune, if something throws me off. And actually the drum, because it's this beautiful sound wave, can help bring back the harmony, if you like, to our
That-
orchestra. And so that's a nice way. You've reminded me there of that diagnostic that we can do.
I love that. The harmony to our orchestra is beautiful. That's lovely. Um, so we've talked a lot about your personal practices using the plant and the drum, journeying, self Reiki. Uh, Can I ask who are some of the people or teachers? You did mention there are some shamans and a friend of yours that introduced you to Reiki. Any others that have inspired you along the way? You've been doing this for quite some time. I know you inspire
Well,
me.
I
I mentioned
loved
earlier that you're someone who has inspired me to explore more Reiki, integrating other practices into Reiki. But I was just wondering if you had other people or teachers.
I did love, sadly, he's passed away now, but Stephen Harrod Buhner, he used to write so beautifully about plants and the sort of the heart intelligence, if you like, of us and the plants. And he was a nature poet, really. So he was an inspiration for me. And also the work of Elliot Cohen, who he wrote Plant Spirit Medicine, and I was lucky enough to meet him. He actually came to Nova Scotia, and I was beside myself with excitement to think that somebody was coming all the way to Nova Scotia, of all
Wow.
places, to do a workshop. And so I got to meet him. And also Pam Montgomery. Pam's great. She wrote Plant Spirit Healing with Pam's book. I think she might have written another book. But also, so those were very influential for me in terms of this whole, it was that kind of confirmation of, yeah, there's something in this plant. There's more to plant medicine than making herbal medicine.
Mm.
However, there's a herbalist, she's quite controversial, and she's called Susan Weed. And she, wish I could remember what the book was. Anyway, I had one of her herbal books, and it only dealt with about a handful of herbs, but each chapter she wrote, she made the plant come alive. Like for dandelion, she gave dandelion an accent, and dandelion was introducing himself like this. And that for me, it really influenced me. I thought, wow, plants have personalities. And so these kind of, I think for me, I was needing that permission. I needed to see it sort of from someone else, because then it helped me go, yeah, that's what I see. That I see plants as personalities. I appreciate, I can relate to that. So that for me was very influential. I thought, yeah, I totally get that. That is singing to, what I say. And yeah, so those are some just that spring to mind in terms of that. When I was working on the farm, it was this, I was, I had, there's lots of lovely herbalists like Rosemary Gladstar, for example, who were influential for me in terms of like how I'm making my herbal medicines. But it was when I started to get into this aspect of plant spirit shamanism that those teachers were really influential for me in terms of affirming, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. They were kind of saying, yeah, this is happening, and I'm like, yeah, that's totally happening to me. So that was always it. So it was if you like, it gave me the green light. I just, that's why I started writing about my experiences. And also, I suppose I wasn't just writing about them, I was just experimenting, because that was for me the I suppose the thing that has helped me is doing, it sounds really boring, just doing the work. It's just, you got to do it. You can't just always talk about it. You can't just Instagram about it. You got to just do the work. And when I was running that farm, we ran the farm for 5 years. It was a flower and herb farm. But I mean, there was obviously a lot of work to do with plants, and we're just with the plants. And obviously, I had my Reiki and my shamanic practice as well. So it was this whole thing of being nature and being in relationship with nature and living it. So we were living it daily. And actually this was there was the beautiful, I suppose, in a sense, the community that I lived with in Nova Scotia, in Passamagoula. They taught me. They were brilliant teachers for me, because I was, and I'm saying this because I think it's important for people to hear. So when I studied herbal medicine, I dropped out. I didn't want to be a clinical herbalist. It's a long story as to what happened to the school I was studying with, but short story is I didn't finish my training. So there I was, haven't got the piece of paper that officially says, oh, I'm a clinical herbalist. And I beat myself up about that for many years. And then when I'm in Nova Scotia, my community is asking me, well, Faye, could you do a talk at the library? And I'm like, no, I can't do that because I'm not a herbalist. And I remember being at the market one day, and I had all my herbs with me, the ones we grew, and I made some herbal products and some teas and so on. And a lady came up and she said, oh, wow, you're a herbalist. And again, I went, no, I'm not a herbalist. And because I was so stuck with this whole idea of, because I didn't get the certificate from the school, I wasn't a herbalist. And that community, I mean, I remember this lady saying to me, well, you're a herbalist to me. You know much more than I know about all these plants growing here. And so that really was a really deep learning for me. And they were right. I knew I had years under my belt of and connection to the plants, and so yes, it was this encouragement to share what you know, just share what you know, and that's what I started doing.
The universe brought that woman to you to validate, right? To validate. And sometimes that's all we need. We need someone. We do the work, we're experimenting, we're curious, we have a pile of books, we're reading and learning. And sometimes it just takes someone to say, yes, but you are a healer or a shaman or Reiki healer, whatever it is. And that's the nudge, and it's great. Um, yes, to do the work, to experiment. I wrote this down, and to actually live it. Those are things that we need to do. And I want to end by asking a question around ceremonies that I know you do ceremonies regularly. I subscribe to your Substack, I guess subscription, and you offer that with the paid. But you do that. People can also do it separately and pay for that. But there are these wonderful ceremonies that you use the drum, you introduce plants, and you do it seasonally to honor the changes in the seasons or the shifts on the seasonal wheel. And I think that concept is starting to really come into play here in the States. And I don't want to compare the States to the other place, but we're a little behind in practicing certain things. But recently you did one for Imbolc, and it was just lovely. And what do you feel is the importance of these ceremonies or rituals? And maybe talk about, besides what I mentioned, some of the things that you incorporate in your rituals. But why is it important to honor these changes, these shifts in season?
The naughty part of me wants to go because it's fun and it's an excuse to get
It's
together and celebrate. And so I started. It was probably about okay, maybe not quite 20 years ago, but certainly 15 years ago. Let's say I was really learning about. Well, God, no, it's in me because I've been brought up in the British Isles. It is within me. When I'm 7 years old at school, we're having to dance around the maypole, which is part of the Beltane celebration on
right.
the 1st of May, which is all about fertility. So it's within me, and I grew up with Morris dancers, and again, this is groups who dance in certain times of the year. So I think it's within me. It's part of, and also, and I don't know if you have these in the States, but we used to have harvest festivals. And I'll never forget when I was 6, I was a beetroot and had to sit in church, and I had to say beetroot at the top of my voice, because we were celebrating the harvest.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a rural village in the UK, and so it is part of my heritage. It's part of me. When I started studying. I did a course with OBOD, which is a Druid organization here in the UK. And I did that many years ago. And again, that brought it back to my attention, that what we have in what you might call the pagan year, in the States, you might know it as that. So there are these different festivals throughout the year, and it's pretty much like every 6 weeks it means, oh, it's a bit of a get together. And
Okay.
actually,
Yeah.
what and they follow, they because they include the solstices and the equinox, they're following the position of the sun. So we're going around the year. It's kind of cutting the year as a piece of cake. And what they're just really interesting opportunities to check in with yourself, see, how am I feeling? How does this time of year affect me? What's important to me? What's not important to me? What's shifting? And also it makes us more aware of our environment, because we notice which plants are coming up, what are the birds doing? What am I eating at this time of year? How are my energy levels? What is the daylight like? And I think one of the things I found hard actually about when I lived in Nova Scotia is because the seasons were slightly different. And so
Mm.
my sort of traditional wheel of the year, I was we did like the 1st of May, and I'm thinking, but this isn't the 1st of May. This isn't there, because again, the plants were slightly not as I'm used to them being in my body. I'm used to
Right.
it being a certain time of year, and I'm seeing daffodils, or I'm seeing the catkins on the willow. So it's an important way to kind of ground in your environment, and
Mm.
to remember again this relationship that we're in with the natural world. And the reason that that is important to me is because it helps me feel supported, and it helps me feel that sense of and that deep connection. And so when I'm having my wobbly days, when I'm kind of in the teary kind of, I don't know what to do with my life, you know, all the silliness that happens, I can go out to a tree, I can sit down and I can feel where the energy is that will support me for whatever it is that I'm going through. But also gathering in ceremony, it's a way to pause and sort of see how you are. Like, I mean, in a sense, there are some people that will follow the cycle of the moon, and every full moon and dark moon, you know, they will have these. And again, it's lovely to be in a cycle, really, and honoring the. And also for us, historically, you know, there are plants which are associated with these different stages of the year. And what I encourage everybody to do is, you know, it's almost like, don't necessarily read it from a book that says, oh, at this time of year, you know, this plant is this and this is the energy. It's like, feel into it, you know. So the next one we've got coming up, we've got equinox coming up, spring equinox for us in the Northern Hemisphere. And, you know, so that's the equal amount of daylight I don't know what I'm saying.
Daylight and nighttime.
Daylight and darkness.
It's equal, right?
It's equal. And so that's an opportunity to ask yourself, you know, well, where is the balance in my life, and what needs more balance? And just again asking ourselves these questions, and we can feel the support of the environment that we have around us. So again, if you're in a city, that environment is still supporting you. You can still notice, even if you're like, nope, I live in an area with no trees. It's like, well, I'm sure you can notice how much daylight there is, or how the temperature feels, or sometimes there's a feeling in the air. And it's just becoming aware of your surroundings, because for me, like I said, it's the sense of belonging and support that we get, and we realize we are not alone, we're part of a much greater whole, and we're a very important cog in this mighty web of wonder. And even though we can't see the full picture, we're just doing our thing, and we know, because we can feel this connection with the community, unseen and seen, around us.
That's beautiful. I love that. So we'll end on that lovely sentence or words from you. I just I have enjoyed this interview with you, this connection, this conversation, this chat. You just are so lovely, and I hope that people find a way to connect with you. If you want to mention briefly where we can find you, our audience can find you, I'm going to put everything in the show notes, including the books that you mentioned by Elliot Cohen and the other individuals. But if you want to let us know how my audience can find you.
Sure. So I've got my website, which is fayjohnston.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Plants That Speak on Instagram, though I'm rubbish at social media. But I do publish on my Substack account, which is Soul Awakenings with Fay Johnstone. And that is what Rose was. I have a YouTube channel as well, which is Fay Johnstone. But Rose was sharing that if you subscribe on Substack, you'll get all my newsletters, and there's some free events that I do regularly, and also for paid subscribers each month there's an event, whether it's a qigong or an online ceremony or something like that.
Yes, and you also have a shamanic Reiki drumming course coming up, I believe, soon.
I do. In fact, all the events are going to be on my website, as well as my online courses, because there are some online courses there that you mentioned, Shamanic Reiki Drumming and Plant Spirit Reiki as well is on there.
And some that you also host in Scotland. One of these days I will come over and be a part of one of those in-person classes with you. So thank you so much.
Well, yeah, I should plug that, because I have an amazing garden by the sea. We have a yurt. It's a beautiful place for retreats, and also the Plant Spirit Summer School, which happens every year in June, July time. Yeah, dates are on the website for that. And that's a 5-day plant immersion. So that's really kind of just immersing yourself with plants and connecting to what wants to come through you, led by the plants. We're always led by the plants. So
Love
that's a
that.
really wonderful experience. If anyone listening thinks, oh my God, I've got to do that, then come and join us in the summer. It'd be
Yes.
lovely.
You may see me there one day soon, I hope. Thank you
I
so
hope.
much, Faye, for joining us on Chat Off the Mat. I really appreciate your time and your energy here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining me here on Chat Off the Mat. I hope these stories have inspired you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with those who might benefit. Your support helps me spread awareness about the power of transformative healing. Stay connected with me on social media. Reach out with your own healing stories or topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Your voice is an essential part of this community. I hope that your healing journey is filled with self-discovery, curiosity, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the power that resides within you. Until next time, I'm Rose Whippage, wishing you a journey filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities.